And the first wedding in our family. And we had, Dad built an unusually nice big house. And they decided they were going to have a wedding at home. And Mother went to town and got a 12-setting china, white china with a pretty pattern on it. And her wedding dinner was served on that. And all 8 girls got married at home, except Christine. She got married in Montana. And every one of the girls had their wedding dinner served on the same dish. You could...
I see you have some of those there. You want to hold that plate up?
I can have some of them. Probably don't have to see. You don't like that, huh?
Oh. You just hold one of the plates up like this so that we can kind of take a look at. So those are the wedding dishes, huh?
Mm-hmm. Those are separate. These were for the 8 girls' wedding dinner for sure.
How about that?
Now, am I to tell you what they are?
Yep.
Well, this is the setting that my mother bought when the oldest girl was married in the family. And since then, all the girls had their weddings at home. And this set was served on every one of the wedding dinners. The 8 wedding dinners.
That's really something. They still have them now. That's great.
Oh, yes, yes. We had the cups were broken, and some pieces were broken too.
They're pretty light. They're not real heavy to
Yes,
last.
they are.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. What does it say on the back? I see it somewhere. Read that.
I can't see. Oh, you wanted me to say what was?
Serves Royal Semi-Porcelain, England.
Yeah.
Wooden Sun. And it has a number on it.
It was this set was bought from a Englishman that had a store in Cooperstown. That's where she bought most of her china and dishes she had. He was there for years. His name was Jimison. And he was English as English, and his wife was too, but really nice people. Very nice people.
When you got married, how old were you?
I was 25, and Mel was 25 the day after we were married.
And
you see, I was about 10 months older than he.
did you stay in Cooperstown then, or?
Well, Mel was going to school then, and his folks were living there, and he stayed there when he wasn't away working or going to school, and I was at home.
So when you got married, where did you live?
Well,
do you live?
The first year, he taught the first year, he taught a year before we were married. And he taught in a little town near home 2 years. And we lived in that town the first year, and then after that, Mel went to school all the time where we were working.
What was the name of that school?
Mose.
Mose, yeah. I think I saw that school before.
Oh,
they took it down.
It's in the book now. It's one of the outstanding places, popular old places.
Nothing in there anymore, I don't think.
There are hardly no buildings here anymore. Yeah.
Which the first one?
I can remember when McKinley was shot, and that was in 1901. I remember my brother Bill coming home from town horseback, and he was coming real fast, and we were out in the yard, and Ma said, I wonder what's happened. Billy is coming, is in such a hurry. And as he come closer by, I could just hear him call out, Ma, our president was shot. And that just stayed with me like it's happened.
Must have had some impact, because you were just teeny then.
Oh, yes. And, well, we were more politically minded than the young people are today, too. That's closer. And I remember the volcano in Kodiak, in Alaska.
Katmai.
Now, that was 1908. And I grew up, well, remember, it was on a Sunday, and the air was hazy, and it had a kind of a tannish look, and you could look directly at the sun. And my sister Louise said, let's go out for a walk. So we went out in the pasture, and I can remember very well, there was some old machinery standing out in the open, and Louise, she walked up to it and she wrote my name on an old machine that was there. The dust was so thick that, and that was, it took that, there was still dust from that still in the air, but it took over a year to go around the world just once. And then we also had trouble with dust that was harder for us to handle. And that was the dust storms we had in Dakota in the late 29 and the early 30s. That would go through the walls of the house. And it was so fine, and we didn't have the vacuum cleaners then. And when you tried to wash it off with water, you couldn't handle it. Water wouldn't soak into it. The only thing we'd use is just take a brush or something and just brush it off of the windowsills, and you would clean up the house. It would get rid of the dust, and all of a sudden it would come, and that bothered for 2 years. And I well remember that one Sunday we were driving to my brother's place, and it was 4:30 in the afternoon in summertime, and we couldn't see the roads. And the roads had ruts then. They didn't have smooth paved roads as we do now. And those ruts would fill with dust, and a buggy or even the old Model T Ford you couldn't guide it in that sand or dust.
Was that dust coming from your fields or further south?
From all the fields. It just blew the crops off. And that's when farming changed. They put the vegetation back in the soil rather than burn it. Years ago, they had we thrashed every fall, and there'd be huge stacks of straw. And now the machinery are made so that straw just chewed up real fine and spread on the fields that's just being harvested. But then you could go out, for a couple of weeks. Every night you could count fires along the horizon, as high as 30, 40 fires, and that was all burned. And the manure from the stables was thrown in a pile on that there, and after it got old and dry, they would set a fire to it, and you know that wouldn't burn, but that odor would be there and would smolder for all summer until the next rain was, and that was all destroyed. And the crops just, the land was just, had no
nutrients in it.
No nutrients.
Huh.
So they learned a lot.
They sure did, sure changed.
Let's see what this was. And then I remember the Titanic. It's that one can't forget. But I can remember that the main thing was there was many stories in the paper about it, but they had a big picture on the front page of a man named John Astor. He was on his wedding trip, and he lost his life. And, the stories that come out about that, it just seems impossible something like that could happen.
Quite a media thing after that happened, I suppose.
Yes.
Printed in the newspaper a lot, or radio, or was it on the radio then?
Oh, no, just a paper.
Just a paper.
And I went to school in Fargo, and I stayed in the dormitory, And it was a Swedish girl that was my roommate. And she had gone through all the vaccinations and tests and things, so she got passage on the Titanic. And she said the morning that she got on, they were loading the boat. Well, when she came there and rolled up her sleeve, she had some
Dry skin or
on the skin,
eczema or something?
yeah, she had something that was breaking out of her skin, and the doctor says, "Oh, you can't go." And she said, well, she just couldn't possibly be because there were 4 girls in the group were together that were going to Palace. But there's absolutely no chance. And she said she went home. She said she was the sickest, most discouraged, and she said she was angry and everything. And she just said she just felt she could never get over that. And she was living, I imagine she's living today yet because she was about my age. But she said if a person could ever be thankful and ever make a person more religious, she said that did something to me. So she was thankful.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And that's quite unusual.
And were there a lot of diseases and things and growing up and the kids that lived there?
You mean, yeah, well, we went through the times that they had epidemics of measles. Measles were bad, and smallpox. But diphtheria was the worst. And it's such a horrible way they suffered before they would pass away, you know.
Did kids in your immediate family, did they become real sick with diphtheria?
Yeah, we had everyone in the family, that is, except Mom and Dad, had diphtheria, except myself and Florence, and she was 6 months old.
Oh.
And the doctors, when he came out, he said to Mom, he said, we won't be able to do anything for the baby if she gets it. But she didn't get it. And I didn't get it. And I was about 8 years old, and Mom said she said she can't ever think of how much I helped her. I wanted to help her, and she had to go down the basement all the time. We had a deep basement, and run errands of water, take things to the patients and stuff, you know. So I was a pretty busy girl then. And they had this poliomyelitis, or what they call it, we called it, what do we call it? I think just now. But that was bad. They had that quite often.
Was that?
And then whooping cough was the thing that...
Consumption or...
Oh, they had a lot of consumption. And they figured the reason why they had, we call it TB now for short, tuberculosis. They had a lot of that because people lived in dirt houses or just poorly built houses. They had a lot of that. And the Indians, you know, when they took them out of their way of living and put them in buildings, they had many deaths from that. It just seemed as though they couldn't find anything to cure that. But the whooping cough was bad. When the baby got that, there wasn't much hope for them to get over that.
12th. Today's February 12th, Saturday, 1994. And Devin and Karen and I are here with Grandma Gigi, and the wind's really blowing today.
That thing that you gave us for Christmas, it's blowing and hitting the wall today. That's really the first time. Did you notice it?
Mm-hmm.
That's about the hardest I've seen the wind blow that.
Sunday, February 13th, and we're up at Grandma Gigi's and we're taping the second part of her story. And Carolyn and Kenneth have taken off for a little trip to Reno, and so Grandma's here taking care of Bruno. And I'll show you where Bruno is right now. Hi, Bruno. There he is. Okay, Grandma, you're going to tell us about a little bit more about when the dust storms they came into North Dakota, and what you said it was really fine sand and yeah. Did you want to tell us some more about that?
Well, the sand was so fine that it was almost impossible to get rid of it. And it was choking. There was a lot of pneumonia during that time. Even the livestock got pneumonia from inhaling so much dust. And to get about in a car was almost impossible in some areas.
How long did that last?
Really 2 seasons where there were no crops. All the topsoil, the humus blew away and there was just sand left.
It must have been real frustrating for the farmers.
Yes, yes it was.
How did they eat?
Pardon?
How did they eat?
Oh, well, they had things stored like they usually do, but it was very hard on the livestock. And of course there were no crops then. The grain, if it come up, would just be cut down by the sand. I can't get tired of talking this morning.
Yeah, that's okay. How'd that affect the farm?
Pardon?
The First World War?
Well, there's Cooperstown was the gathering place for the boys that were drafted, and there were just no young men left in that area.
Were you about?
And they'd gather at Cooperstown, and they'd take all the men at one time. They were big trainloads.
Were you about 19, or how old were you then? Were you
I
younger?
must have been about 18, 19.
So they took all the men away when you were 18, 19 years old.
Well, I didn't miss them anyway because those my age that I'd be interested in were there.
So they
left there.
They didn't take the young ones, or they didn't take the farmers, or?
No, I have the 4 brothers. The 2 oldest ones were ranching, and they weren't drafted, and the 2 youngest ones were underage.
How about Melvin? How come he didn't go?
He and Irwin were drafted, were called at the last draft, and peace was declared just before they left.
Oh, really?
Before they were ready to leave. They never did get to go to.
So they never even went in the service then, didn't have to go in at all?
No, they didn't have to.
No, they just lucked out?
Mel just went in a year or so later. But otherwise, they weren't called during the war.
What do you mean he went out? He went out where?
Huh?
What did Melvin do?
Oh, he just enlisted. They had short-term enlistments, you know, where the young boys would enlist for a year or so.
So Grandpa was in the
training.
service for a year then?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that. So where did he go when he? What did he do?
Well, he really spent most of the time in Moorhead then, if they had a camp there or something.
So he must have had some sort of uniform to wear and everything?
Oh, yes, yes. Well, they had, the regular army training.
So
They had their guns and everything.
he was there for about a year, and then did he
Yes.
come back home to the farm?
Yes. Then he started going to school about that time.
Where'd he go?
Well, he went to Concordia College first.
Did he finish high school?
Well, he when he entered the academy, he was just in the 5th grade. The boys didn't go to school. They had to stay home and help their dads on the farm. And then, of course, when he went to Concordia, he just thought he'd just take a business course of some kind. And when he went to register to attend, the president of the college talked to him, and when he told the president what kind of course he would like to take, he asked Melvin. He said, "Now, if someone, would you like to have me tell you, advise you?" And Melvin said, "Sure, you know." And he when when the president told him what kind of course he advised him, well, Melvin said, "I just can't do that because I haven't any money and no income. And we'll take this course. I'll see to it that you can come, and we'll give you something to do so you earn your board and room." And that's what happened.
Wow.
Because Melvin went to school and just was clothes he had on. But he worked too. They even seen to it that he worked quite of the during the day, and they let them have a light on in the basement by the furnace room. Anytime after the dormitory had to be in dark. And after Melvin. And of course Melvin liked that because he said he was alone and it was warm and cozy and quiet. But it worked that bandage.
So what were you doing when he was at college?
Well, he worked in a furnace room, and he did a lot of work in the kitchen. He was kind of a roustabout. Any odd job that he'd have, he would do.
But what were you doing at that time?
I was at home.
At home? Were you going out with Grandpa at all then, or was that later?
Huh?
Were you dating with Grandpa, or?
Yeah, I started going with him. I didn't tell you, did I, how it happened that he made up his mind that he wanted to school? Well, some of the kids that he chummed with, they had some wealthy farmers back there, Norwegians, and their kids had their cars and of course Melvin were in school with them and was mingling with them, and he said one day he's out there, and he always thought he'd like to go to school because those kids that he's playing with had his picture, you know. And he said that he was pitching hay, and was it ever hot. And Melvin never could work very hard as steady. He could work for a short while, but he didn't have the resistance. And he just said, "I'm going to go to school. I'm going to take a business course, get into some kind of office work." That's what he thought he'd like to do. And he just made up his mind and he stuck to it. His folks and different ones told him, "Don't do that, you know." I don't know if they thought he was too foolish or if they just thought that the kids should stay on the farm like their dad or what, but...
So when he came to visit you, how did he get there? Did he catch a ride, or how did he come out to visit?
You mean when he was living at home?
Well, when he was going to school and everything, huh?
Oh, well, the only time he got home was during vacation. Someone come from Fargo, you know, by car or something. They'd share a ride there. But he rode on train quite a bit, though, too.
So how did you decide, or how did he decide that he wanted to get married then if he's going to school and everything? How'd that happen?
Well, he just, after we went together a couple of years, he just thought that he could handle, you know, going to school and living at the same time, but that didn't work.
So you got married and he was
Yeah,
still trying to go to school?
I worked quite a bit after we were married.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where'd you work when?
Well, I did waitress work and worked at the register, what do you call it? Combination. That was the Rudolph Hotel in Valley City, and that was a big hotel. They had usually about 4 waitresses on the floor at a time. And then the hotel was close to the college, and then those kids would just come in swarms certain time of the day, and then of course they had more help. But it was a nice job, clean job, and
So did Grandpa have to quit school then, or
no,
did he finish?
Went to school then.
He finished up?
No, well, he really didn't finish up. He taught a year before we were married, you know.
Mm.
He had, it's the first certificate the students that were taking teaching that they could teach, I think it's 2 years on that, diploma or certificate, whatever you call it.
So was that at Moe's or?
Yeah, and
name
then
of the
he
town?
taught Moe's.
Moe's. That wasn't much of a town, was it?
I don't know, I guess. Had a big store and a milk station, 2 elevators, a school, and a little church. That was about all, and a couple of residential people living around there.
Then Grandpa lived with somebody that lived near the school? Or?
The store was a big building, and it had a whole big upstairs, and he had his apartments up there.
It was like a little one-room schoolhouse, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, I think he had 34 pupils at one time.
Of different ages, I suppose.
And he was, every grade, that's what I can't understand how they, and those kids did, some of them very well. But he even didn't have no barber or nothing. When they had a program or something, Melvin spent about a day trimming all the boys' hair. And they always like that. We're going to get a haircut, you know. They never got haircuts. The hair would grow up on the cuff. It was really down-to-earth living there.
Huh. So then he finished school, and you got married before he finished school. Then he finished school, and then what did you do
He went
after he finished? Where'd you go?
Well, then he taught for you know, he taught during the time he was going to school a couple of years, and then he kept on teaching after.
At Moe's?
No, at Hannaford.
Oh, then he taught at Hannaford.
4 years in Hannaford. Then of course he had high school there. I think 7 teachers and a faculty there then.
So what did he teach at Hannaford?
Huh?
What did he teach at Hannaford?
Well, he just taught. He was the superintendent, and then he taught the classes that the teachers were the shortage of teachers, you know. And he usually taught English, history, and what was the other one? Well, 3 subjects he usually covered that day. And
Then where did you guys go after Hannaford? Did he apply for a job somewhere else, or?
well, then after the 4th year, it got so that he wasn't getting $90 a month, you know. And to support 3 and pay rent and house and everything, and it just got so that he just said he just couldn't do that. He'd have to just leave this area.
So were you in Hannaford when Ken was born then?
Well, before. He was a year old when Melvin started teaching in Hannaford.
So where was he born?
In Cooperstown, at Wonkies. We were at Wonkies that night. And then after he taught in Hannaford, he came out west here. And
Well, let's
there
go back.
was no work then, huh?
Let's go back first to when Ken was born, did you go to a hospital then?
No.
You just stayed at...
They didn't even have a, in later years after he was born, they had pretty good in Cooperstown because they had some a scan, and they just had one or two of them that they were nurses, Scandinavians and their families, and had homes, and they would take the patients into the home. Because you see, the doctor didn't have no hospital to work in, and the doctor had to go directly to the home of the parents. That's where 9 is for kids were born in homes like that. They call it.
So when Ken was born, you were... he was born at Bill Wonke's house and Edna's house?
Yeah.
So were you living there at the time?
No, Melvin was going to school then.
You were visiting?
Yes, and it was, well, it was...
December.
Well, it was Christmas vacation. We came home and spent Christmas vacation at home, and were with our relatives, you know, those 10 days.
So did you plan on him being born in Cooperstown?
No,
he
was premature months.
Oh.
It just upset the apple cart. But I had a doctor there in Valley City, and of course they had a hospital there, and that's where I was going. And before we left, I went to the office and talked to the doctor, told him that it's Christmas time, and asked if it would be safe for me to go home. Oh yes, yes. So he recommended some medicine, give me some medicine to take along. I forget why I should take it or if something had happened. But that was Friday night, so we went home and stopped in Cooperstown at Wonke's. And the next morning was Saturday, and Bill Wonke, to Melvin, let's go to Valley City and do some Christmas shopping. And yeah, sure. So we stayed home because Edna had her family then, you know, too, so we couldn't go drag along some men folks. And they went to Valley City, and I was ironing clothes, and I heard stuff fucking just flood. And of course, Edna knew right away then that the baby was coming. And there they were in Valley City, and we were there alone. And she called up Valley City, and the police located them. And told them to bring the baby's clothes, because all his layout and everything was in a cardboard box under the bed. And so they got there, and at Knudsen, we had our apartments at Mrs. Knudsen. She said there, Melvin and Bill were, and they couldn't get that box. It was under the bed, you know. Well, Mrs. said, well, lift it up like this. They got kidded about that for so long ago. And they got home there then, and Kenneth was born in the following morning.
So Grandpa was home plenty of time for the baby.
Yeah, they got home time.
So who delivered the baby then?
The doctor.
Okay.
Oh,
that's good.
Dr. Almco, the regular old farmer, the family doctor we had for years.
Yeah. And then it was after that
and then
you
the nurse
went to Hannaford,
was the section boss's daughter was a nurse. They just lived next door, so she came over.
Oh, well, that's a Christmas surprise, wasn't it? December 23rd.
Yeah. Almost. And that was the day that I got the cup. I get those two. I either got the Afghan or either a crib blanket that Grandma had made with the Dutch girls on it.
Hmm. Well,
It was a pretty one. I just worn to a shirt.
what cup was that? Which cup?
Not cup, that picture.
For the drinking pitcher? The bird?
The cream, cream picture.
Cream pitcher.
It was Christmas present, you know.
Oh, I see.
And that came in the mail.
Oh.
And that came the same day that he was on the way.
Huh. So then after that, it was a while after that, then you went to Hanford, and Grandpa taught there for 4 years. And then
Well, yeah, let's see. Yeah.
And then it wasn't enough money for the
And
three of
that's
you.
That's the last school that he taught there in Dakota. And he came out here and he later on here and tried to get work in the cannery and stuff. Because that was when we had the Depression. There was nothing. And he got to school in Grand Coulee.
So you were staying with
Now,
his sister or something? Oh, you were at home.
Yeah, we stayed home and Melvin came out here.
But did he have a brother or sister, someone out here? Is that why he
Yeah,
came?
Bertha.
Bertha was out here.
Well, their whole family was out here then.
Oh.
Herman had his home in Portland. Bertha, they both had their homes, nice homes at that time. They were sitting pretty. Herman had bricklaying and.
What was going on at Grand Coulee Dam that he got a job there?
Oh, he didn't get it. He was in Joyce. That's near Great Fall, near lots of Port Angeles on the point. Alice's husband Hutch was teaching at Joyce School, and he was visiting with them at most of the time. Stayed with them. Hutch always was very friendly to Melvin. They got along pretty good. That's when and then he got acquainted with the state instructor or state superintendent, and he helped Melvin get that job. And it just happened that they had a big building there, and all those transits coming in there, they had real lot of heavy work building the dam. And it was kind of a rough class of people. And they had didn't have room enough to take all the kids at once, so they had 2 shifts. And Melvin had to sit through all those 2 shifts all the time. So he made it to first year, and he just had to give up the kids. His health wouldn't take it. So he came back to Olympia again, and that's when he got into the plywood. But he was there a year or so. See, that was 40 that he got to the plywood. But then he got kind of interested in going out to help organizing. There were a couple of fellows that was promoting this plywood at the time, and he got interested in that. And once in a while he'd get a job working the cannery a couple of days or something like that. But that's when we existed.
So you came out here and lived out here then when he was...
Well, I came out while he was in Grand Coulee.
Mm-hmm.
And we got there right in the fall when school started. And here, and Melvin had a little house built, or shack, you know, big front room, and a little kitchen and a bedroom. And it's just up on props, you know. And of course the weather was mild there at that time. And then we were there just about a week, and Kenny was restless that night. And he'd complain and crying. I got up and put on a light, and gee, he had spots all over him. And he had the measles. And don't you know that about a week or so after there, the school was almost closed because of measles. So
But you didn't tell anybody you brought it, huh?
Well, I suppose Melvin told, because that's nothing, those diseases go around, they don't try. But we never knew that we were near a measles, never heard of a measles, but he just had the...
Maybe somebody on the
measles,
trip out
yeah,
had it or something.
Yeah.
Huh.
But you know, there are a lot of parents that send their kids to school that have contagious things and they don't
Yeah.
bother them.
How did World War II affect your family?
Hmm?
How did World War II affect your family? World War II? What was going on with you guys when World War II came about? Second World War.
Oh, here?
Yeah, were you, it was, were you in Olympia or had you
Oh
moved?
no, we were here in Anacortes. I can tell you just what time of the day it was and where I was sitting. See, Ken was, he must have close to about, well, 40. From 20 to 40, he was a young, he was a teenager when he came to Anacortes. But you know, he had those deformity, those ears, you know. And I tell you, he sure went to hell with that. I know it's affected his life. He'd be a different person. He used to say, he'd come home and he'd say, he didn't, he said, you know, when I go to school and when I walk in the schools, he said, down, you know, toward the desk or something like that, he said, they all said I have elephant ears, and I just feel like I got big ears, he'd say. And they just ribbed him all the time and busting all over. And it just makes me mad, and I think of it. But they never did it here.
Just in Olympia, huh?
No.
You probably just had certain kids that...
They did at home too.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you, it's, you know, when you have kids, and you have sisters or brothers, they have kids, and some will have a little more leaning towards some of those kids, Now, you know, well, I shouldn't tell troubles anyway, but I can tell you one thing, that Russell was petted and Kenny was bossed and scuffed around. Never no time for him. And I can tell you when he went, when he had nothing else to do and he was about 5 years old and was at home and Russell was starting school out the country then. We were at home then. He would just go along with the kids to school. And of course there was a little friction, a teacher, you know, she's very careful, she didn't want anyone that wasn't 6 at a certain day or something like that. But they're out playing and there was a family, their boy was going to school there. His dad was, his grandfather, I guess, was in business in Cooperstown, and they thought they're a little nicer. And he peed in a pop bottle and gave it to Ricky, to Kenny's drink, and Kenny thought it was. And ha ha ha, you know, even Russell, you know, no sympathy at all, you know. And things like that, Kenny got, so he wasn't.
Probably a good thing you moved, I guess. Probably a good thing you moved.
Oh, yeah. I should say that's the best thing we did is when we moved away from North Dakota anyway, for Melvin, for everyone. Because, and then, I don't know, he run into a mess on his own family that came out here. Our family back home was much easier to get along with than what the Hollands. Those girls, they never talked together sometimes. I'll bet you that Alice and Clara didn't talk to each other for about 5 years. They'd go to family gatherings and stuff, but they never talked together. And how it happened that they started talking to me, Clara was very stubborn. But Alice was tutored in college, and we were at Alice's there. And we all tried to tell them to talk, to make up and not be like that, the family, life is too short. Well, she was just feeling good. She wasn't drunk. She was just feeling good. She called up and made up with Clara.
That's good.
Yeah, but it just lasted that night. And went right back on the same thing again. But she...
What were they mad about?
I don't know.
Must have been something.
Well, but...
You don't know.
And Melvin used to talk to those girls. It used to bother him so. He worried more about those girls than and he'd get letters from them telling them trouble. And all the girls kind of, they acted and they talked as though they really liked Melvin, but they liked him maybe for that, but Herman was their pet there. His mom was pet, It was so that she was so partial to him, that when we were in, of course our houses, they were modern back home. And when we were in Portland, Herman had a modern home. Of course, he had a bathroom. And she said, it never smells in the bathroom after Herman goes in there like the rest of us. It's things like that,
That's terrible. I remember Grandma Serena lived here with you for a while, didn't she?
Yeah.
Did she pass away when she was living here, or didn't she?
Well, we took her to the hospital.
Yeah.
And then after she would sit there, Herman could do anything for her, and he was king, But she would sit here. We had it so that there were 4 boys, and the girls none of them would have her stay with them in their homes. For some reason, I don't know. I know the grandma. Of course, Grandma would be like one of the kids. She'd always be sad. Every time we'd gather, she would have one of the girls, she'd have something to say, and she'd go in the bedroom, close the door, and they'd sit there all day and talk to her. And now, I don't know what they discussed about, but I also felt, well, I'm one of them too, that's being discussed. But,
strange.
I just don't know.
Yeah, because I must not have been very old at all, but I remember seeing her once. I can remember that. Yeah. But I must have been pretty little. It seems like even 3 years old maybe or something.
Well, let's see.
That would have been 1955. When did she pass away?
No, you must have been older than that. I believe that the picture that's taken after their funeral, Kathy's about a year old of that. So how old would you be?
Well, I would have only been 4.
Yeah, well, that would be the, because you remember where the whole family's in.
Yeah.
And Kathy was a year old, I think, at this time.
Yeah.
But she the reason why she's put in the home then, she was staying with us. Those are 3 months that she was due to come here, and she'd sit here, and she wanted to go to Herman, and then she would sit there, and you're mean to me. You're mean to me, she would say. And then Melvin sits there, take about as much as he could or something, and she is tears. He'd get up and leave the room. He'd never talk back to her. I'll try to reason with her. And then she got really bad. She would call her Omund in her Norwegian names when she was young, and her mind wandered. And one night she just got really rowdy, and we called the doctor. And the doctor said, anyway, I asked him what we should do, if we should take her to a hospital, and he said, no, he said, we'll just take her in a hospital here, but she can't come back here. Here,
Who said that?
the doctor.
Oh.
And he said, she will make it all right, but Melvin can't take it. He said it's too much. You can't expect him to take something like that. But you know, I don't know. It just well, Melvin's like his dad.
Tell me about. Well, how long was she in the Barth home? Or?
Well, she was in a nursing home, I think, about a year before she passed away.
I wonder how old she was. Do you remember about?
Well, she must have been close to 80, I think.
Really? Wow.
It must have been about 80 years. I just don't recall what year she passed away. I know she was born in 1964. Mother and her were about the same age.
You mean 1864?
Yes, 18. 18, I think Mom was born in 1860, earlier than 64. I don't just remember exactly the year. There was a time it did, but I forget now.
Mm.
It's,
After Grandpa, getting back to Grandpa's, was working down around Olympia, and then he was going to help some people start up a plywood mill. I remember that you were talking about starting one out at Port Angeles, but then instead they ended up coming to Anacortes to start
you mean in plywood?
the plywood. Was called Anacortes Veneer that they started?
Yes.
And what was Grandpa's position? What did he do for them when he worked there?
Oh, at first?
Yeah.
Labored just like the rest of them. About a year. Worked in 3 shifts.
Was that an American-owned company then?
Oh yes, it's all just working men, plywood, retired plywood. And a lot of people from out of state. We had a lot of people from Dakota that come out.
Who were the original owners that had the money to start it though?
Well, there was an old mill that closed down here, and they paid down. Most of those men, or many of them, had jobs throughout the Depression in plywood plants. And of course they realized what good business it was, and they said, why not own our own? And it was just a co-op, and it was organized right, and they got good honest men that are in there that started the business. That's the important thing.
And I remember there's a house right at the end of Commercial. Was that the first house, or did you live somewhere else before?
No, we lived out on Oaks Avenue, up above where the big boat is tied down below the fish canneries.
Is that house still there?
Yes, yes, it's there.
And then Dad must have, how old was Ken? What, was he?
Well, it was 40. We came there 40, so that'd be 12.
Oh, so he was old enough to go to school and everything. He was like a teenager.
28.
Teenager, yeah.
And yeah, that's still there, but I think there was a fire there, and I think there's been an addition built to it since.
Were you living out there when Ken met Carolyn?
No, I think we were living on Oaks Avenue then.
You mean at Oaks or Commercial?
Yes. I don't think that Carolyn was ever out of Oaks Avenue.
So a Commercial.
We must have just lived there a little more than a year, you know. And that other place, we must have lived in there about 8 years or something like that.
Because he was a teenager when he met Carolyn, so...
Oh yeah, just 14, 15 or 14.
Did they meet at the junior high school?
Yeah, in school, because
Is it?
he came home one day and says, "Ma, I met my wife today." His first day, he had two. There was a girl from going to school from Idaho, and she was it all too, just a really nice little gal. And then Carolyn was next. And they're a lot alike, She was a sweetheart too, Carolyn. She was different. She's different than her sisters. There's some likeness, but she's different. The other ones are likeness between them, but there isn't between Carolyn and her. And of course, you don't want to tell anybody that, but I think she's the prettiest one of the girls. Her features.
Carolyn and Matt, where did they meet each other?
No, well, it was during the war, and Carolyn's dad was transferred to this area, and the family came later. And when she entered school, why, Kenneth met her then. And the first day he saw her, he came home and he said, "Mom, I met my future wife today."
What did you think?
Well, I just laughed about it. That's kids for you. But they got acquainted and they're still married and happy. So young minds are sometimes a lot better than old minds when they pick out a mate.
So did Ken and Carolyn start dating right after that, or?
Well, yes, they started going together quite. Of course, there was not really steady, serious, but they evidently knew what they wanted, or who they wanted.
So when did they get married?
I just can't say. It was on our 25th wedding anniversary, is all I remember.
Right after high school? Right out of high school then?
Yes.
So that was that after the World War II? They got married after?
Yes, it must have been. Yeah.
So none of your, Melvin or Kenneth or none of them had to go into the war, or?
No.
Dismissed it?
We were fortunate. I don't think that none of the Melvin brothers went to war either. They were about the same age as my brothers, and they didn't get to the war either.
What happened in Anacortes around during the war? Did it affect the people in Anacortes much?
Oh yes, we had to darken our windows, and we had different things that was required of us. And of course, there were no women idle. Everybody was involved in some kind of work.
Did you darken the windows all the time, or were there certain times, or how did you know?
Well, I just don't know exactly how long before the war was over before.
So you just would darken them at nighttime, or?
Oh yes, just in the evenings when it was dark. And they're very particular too. There couldn't be any cracks where the light would shine through around a shade or anything like that. Some of them painted their windows, but the disadvantage there was they would be black or dark all the time. But they were very particular about that.
Did they use any of the areas around here, like Fort Casey, during the war, or?
Oh yes, and then they had a lot of these places along the shores where I just don't recall what they were, but there are people stationed in each one. And
lookouts or something?
yes. Mm-hmm.
What did they think might happen? What were they afraid of?
Unnoticed. Oh yes, they watch them quite closely.